Hey everybody, so I was asked to talk about Chris Chan's return to Twitter. Before I get to that, people have been asking me why I keep wearing this shirt in my videos lately. It's because this is the shirt I'm wearing over to my old apartment while I go and sift through dust and cobwebs and everything else, getting everything moved here. Tomorrow I'm getting the last of my big stuff, the couch, the TV, the entertainment center moved over, and have movers coming for that, and then hopefully, hope to God, finally it will, pretty much be moved at that point. Should just be throwing stuff out. And I have to, for some reason, they locked the storage unit on the patio in my old place, and so I've been on the, telling the office, you need to come unlock this because my golf clubs are in there. But anyway, so bringing it around to the topic at hand, Chris Chan. Now, some of you may be aware, I have to do the call to action first or else I will forget to do it. But as many of you already know, last year I recorded and released a Chris Chan concept album called Nowhere Land. It's available streaming wherever music is available streaming. And of course, I encourage you to listen to it, but especially if you like classic progressive rock in the style of Pink Floyd and the Moody Blues and early Genesis and stuff like that, vintage, kind of Alan Parsons Project, Rush, King Crimson, all of that stuff. Well, then this album is definitely for you. And so that said, bringing it around to the topic of Chris Chan being back on Twitter, and people have wanted my perspective and my concerns. Well, so far, it's been interesting because Chris Chan has been on Twitter and has returned to Twitter, but apparently, and maybe I'm missing, if I'm missing something, feel free to bring it to my attention, but he hasn't really posted anything or communicated with anyone as far as we can tell. He's just liking and retweeting things, but he hasn't actually done anything of his own with it. So, part of me wants to say, well, maybe he's finally learned how to behave responsibly on the internet, and then the rest of me reminds that part of me of the last 40 years of Chris Chan. So that's definitely not what's happened. Another possibility is that he's got some kind of situation set up in his whatever home life he has now, whatever group home he's living at or something, where they're letting him on the internet, but they're monitoring his use or something like that. That's a possibility. It could be that there's a lot we don't know. I was thinking, part of how he may have staved off prison time and a conviction and all of that might have been to go into some kind of conservatorship or something like that with some sort of governing entity that can take care of him. These are all possibilities, but one thing to remember, I think we had hoped, we who have, the kooks, weirdos, and assorted insomniacs that follow Chris Chan on the internet, I think we had all hoped that what would happen is the law would his lawyer and the courts and the judges and all of the local social workers and everything would sit down and go through the decades worth of Chris Chan lore and watch the Geno Samuel documentary and learn everything and realize that this is not that this is not somebody that can ever go unmonitored for even a nanosecond, that this is we have somebody that's in a lot of ways you could say almost like Patrick Bateman crossed with Curious George in terms of his personality. And so it's just not somebody that can ever be left alone ever. And so we were hoping for that. I think that the best within us was hoping that he would finally be in a situation where they would understand what in the fuck was going on with this person and finally get him the help that he needs. probably what, as far as this went, as far as what actually had happened behind the scenes, what transpired behind the scenes, probably it was just they only looked into it as far as, this person can't be left alone with his aging mother and needs some kind of group home to live in, and they probably did not give it the due diligence that it needs and deserves. And so what I think is happening is Chris Chan is in, he was able to, they were finally able to get it across to him that he had to stop talking about the trial and the court proceedings and those stupid letters he was writing. They finally got that across to him. And somehow, if somebody took it seriously enough to at least get that, probably his attorney, to get that across to him of like, look, if you ever want to see daylight again, you stop talking about, what's going on behind the scenes. So clearly they were able to put enough of a scare into him to get a little bit of control over him in that regard. So the thing is, though, whatever's going on, Chris Chan is back online, and that is something that cannot ever be a good thing, obviously. Here's what I'm concerned about, though, specifically, and not enough people are talking about this. I think probably because, probably because a lot of people at this point are, not at this point, always with Chris Chan, a lot of people are just watching, waiting for the next stupid, crazy misadventure, that kind of thing. They're waiting for the next part of the Chris Chan story to unfold. And God knows there will always be people trying to reach out to him to provoke the next part of the Chris Chan saga to incur. So, thinking about it all, here's the component of it that's very concerning to me. We know, of course, that Chris Chan identifies as a woman. And the kind of quote-unquote paparazzi photos that have been emerging, if you will, on kind of a monthly basis, where he's seen making whatever limited, public sojourns he's allowed to make as part of his group home situation. Pictures have emerged of him with what appear to be other members of his group home. Like there was one, somebody pointed out in one of the pictures, he appears to be pushing a person in a wheelchair, pushing a person in a wheelchair and things like that. And this is where, if I had to predict based on past behavior and past occurrences, honestly, what I think, and this is not a pretty thing I'm about to describe, and I hate that to be clear, I am not in any way, shape, or form wanting this to be the case at all. This is not, this is absolutely not something that anyone should want to see happen, and I'm not rooting for it to happen. It's just what I'm terrified will happen in this situation based on past behavior. And it is a situation that will be exacerbated by Chris being back on the internet. So, Chris is a biological male with biological male parts. Now, before you start tying a noose and burning stakes and screaming transphobia, please we need to take this situation seriously in and of itself, what it is. And let's just agree to evaluate the situation on the basis of what we're dealing with right here in the moment. Chris Chan is a biological male that identifies as a woman, and it appears that everyone in his group home situation is female, is a woman. And it would be a concern if it was men as well, if he was housed with men as well, albeit maybe less of a concern. But here's the thing. one of the constant things with Chris Chan for the decades that this morbid curiosity has unfolded has been the internet prodding him and provoking him about how undesirable he is sexually, and him going to ridiculous and bizarre lengths to prove everybody wrong. Everything from being pushed and prodded into making sex videos with an inflatable sex doll, doing all kinds of sex acts to try to convince people that he knows what he's doing, famously hiring a prostitute and bragging to everyone about it, famously molesting his mother and bragging to everybody about it, which is what got him in this situation. It is sick and sad and disgusting that there are people in this world, the Isabella Jankeys of the world and that kind of thing, that would pressure and influence a mentally handicapped person like Chris Chan to prevail sexually on unsuspecting targets. That is a sick, sad reality of this world. And here's what I'm afraid of. I am afraid that if the cretinous lunatics of the internet get a hold of Chris again and start exerting influence on him again, what's going to happen is they're going to start poking and prodding him about his sex life again, getting him, intimidating him and appealing to, honestly, the arrogant and narcissistic side of his personality that's going to feel like it needs to, make him feel like he needs to prove something to everybody. We're talking about someone who's functioning at the mental level of about a 10-year-old. And I shudder to say that because I feel like it's an insult to 10-year-olds, but someone who's at about that level and has about that level of impulse control. And you may have already figured out where I'm going with this. He's at this group home with disabled, physically and mentally disabled people who are incompetent to care for themselves. And he is, that people are going, he's going to probably still have the same sex drive he has always had. People are going to start bullying him and intimidating him on the basis of sexuality. And what will happen, I'm terrified, what will happen is he's going to go find some, frail, bedridden creature that can only communicate with gurgling noises, bugger the hell out of it, and then go on the internet and tell everyone he's in love. That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm afraid is going to happen now. It's going to happen next. And, I know people are going to want to say, oh, well, Chris Chan was never actually convicted of sexually assaulting Barb. He only sexually assaulting Barb. He just said that he did it, but it was never proven that he actually did it. And look, the first rule of Chris Chan, even if you are sympathetic to Chris Chan, is that you never cut Chris Chan any slack. So it is a situation where discipline and self-control, disciplining Chris Chan and getting control of Chris Chan is like a game of whack-a-mole. You can get the mole to stop popping up out of one of those holes, but it's still got 25 more that it can pop up out of again. And if enough time goes by, it's going to pop up out of the one that you already whacked it down from to begin with. That's Chris Chan. That's controlling Chris Chan. Whatever he can be convinced not to do something for about 15 minutes at a time, and anything else. Mitzi says hi. he can be convinced not to do something for 15 minutes at a time, and during that 15 minutes, it's still possible that he will once again start doing whatever it was you told him not to do 15 minutes earlier. So that's the thing. This does not bode well. You know, when I did the Nowhere Land album, the narrative voice that I used was a repentant troll. You know, a repentant harasser of Chris Chan that's, you know, trying to tell his fellow weens and internet trolls, like, hey, we need to stop and think about what we've done here. That is the narrative voice I used in telling the story, and it's a voice of desperation, because obviously there will always be, no matter how much you're able to appeal to the humanity, the base level humanity of the garden variety trolls out there, and try to get them to understand, hey man, we need to back off. This is not cool. Again, there will always be the Isabella Jankeys of the world that have no moral compass whatsoever, and get off on manipulating people for the sake of manipulating people. The people who only want to watch the world burn. And those are the people that are going to get a hold of Chris Chan if he's back online. So, like I said, the best, probably the best we can hope for is that he's only able to access Twitter through some kind of intranet system in the group home that monitors the outgoing internet use and everything very, very, very rigidly. I think people have said he's back on Twitter. I mean, not Twitter. Twitch. Or is it? I can't fucking think right now. Twitch is the Nintendo thing with the two little handles, right? Okay. Anyway, that he's back using that, and so it's uncertain. We don't know. We're just waiting for the next shoe to drop. But that's what I'm afraid is going to happen. But there will always be a next shoe to drop, a next foot to drop, if Chris is allowed to if people are allowed to access Chris Chan via the internet. And like I said, that's what I am terrified of, is that he's going to get manipulated and bullied and pressured into sexually assaulting somebody again. And it's going to be, if that happens, if he actually manages to get himself kicked out of this group home, if he manages that, it's anyone's guess where this goes from there. But maybe we can cling to the small kernel of hope that everything's under control. But I'm not holding out any hope for that myself. Anyway, those are my thoughts.